Hello, welcome to this session. Frances, have you already introduced yourself to yourself?
No, I haven't, Janet. I was waiting for you arriving.
I'm so sorry about that. I am delighted to be able to introduce Frances to this session, and I'm really looking forward to Frances Docherty's session on the brain is not just, the body is not just a taxi for the brain, and thinking about more holistically about how our bodies are important for our function, our brains to function. I'm very sorry I'm late. I have just been at another online session and I got caught in the usual problem of going from online session to online session. So I'm just getting my camera up. There you go. So without more ado, could I hand over to Frances? Now, Frances, do you have access to the presenter permissions?
Yes, hopefully. Yes, everything should be fine.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Yes, they should be fine.
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. I think it's my headphones. Everybody else, the sound okay for everybody else? Fantastic. Okay then, Frances, I've been really looking forward to this.
Thank you very much, Janet. So thank you everyone for coming along, taking time out of your busy day, especially at lunchtime. Just to bring our focus to the session, I would like to invite you all to join me in a little centering practice before we start properly. So I'd invite you to feel your feet flat on the floor, feel the weight of your feet against the floor, and feel the weight of your buttocks on the chair. Maybe just experiment to see if your weight is distributed evenly. Are you slightly to the left or the right, or is it in the middle? Is it slightly to the back or the front? And then straightening the spine, keeping it relaxed but straight. And imagine someone has a gold thread that they're just pulling ever so gently to straighten the spine and the neck. And then turning to the front of our body, trying to soften the front, so softening the eyes, relaxing the mouth, relaxing the tongue, softening the belly. And we're just going to take 3 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, and really exhale and let all that air out. Once again, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and one last big breath in through the nose, and exhaling. And then if we gradually become aware of our surroundings, so increasing our peripheral vision. And when we're ready, returning to these lovely faces on screen. So it's lovely to see you at the session today. Thank you for coming along. My name is Frances Docherty, and I'm actually a scientist, so I teach chemistry in the University of Glasgow. But I have a strong interest in meditation. I started to meditate about 10 years ago. There was a time maybe when I had quite a lot of difficulties and I was diagnosed with quite a difficult health issue. And it was a great way to relax, and I felt myself getting calmer, and I thought I'm really good at this meditation stuff. And I went to a session one day where they were doing a different type of meditation. It was a body scan meditation. So you lie down and you start to feel from your feet up to your head, and you're aware of every part of the body. And I realized I was really bad at this. I was really disconnected from the body. I wasn't good at feeling into it. And I thought, I'm not so good at this meditation. As I thought it was all in my head, and there was this disconnect between the body and the mind. So that got me really interested in embodiment, and I went on to study embodiment and learn a bit more about the connection between the mind and body. So for anyone that's not sure what embodiment means, let's maybe just start with the opposite of embodiment. So if I ask you to look at your hand just now, hold up your hand and have a look. If we're not thinking from an embodied point of view, we could just think of our hand as a lump of meat. It's made up of flesh and tissue and bone and skin and nails and hairs. Its function is to pick things up and put them down, open doors. It's really there to move things about. However, if I was to think about it from an embodied point of view, I might think of all the things I do with this hand and the feelings that that would generate. So for example, maybe I would think about patting a crying baby and how my hand is connecting to that baby and soothing it and the emotions that would generate in me. I might think about holding hands with a lover for the first time. I might think about stroking a dog or a cat and the calmness that that would bring to me. So connected to all these movements are some type of emotion, and that's what we mean by embodiment, connecting our mind to our body. So just in the same way, if I had come along today and went, "Hi, really nice to see you," you'd have thought, "Oh, she's really tired or she's really ill, there's something wrong with her." My emotions would be transferred through the body. I can affect my mind in the opposite direction by, for example, stroking the cat and getting feelings of calmness. So that's, when we talk about embodiment, that's what we're thinking about. So there's lots and lots of different ways we can bring embodiment into our life. I mean, it's always there, but we're really not just aware of it all the time and what our embodied patterns are. So I thought we'd have a little bit of fun since it's meant to be a festival. And we would look at a model called the 4 Elements Model of Embodiment. And it's a really, really simple model that's meant to help us look at what our personality types are through this. So if I share my screen, hopefully you can see that. And in the 4 Elements model, we're going to use a really simple model, which is just based on earth, air, fire, and water. So there's lots and lots of different places and traditions that use earth, air, fire, and water, not just for embodiment. There's models that are more complicated, but the beauty of this is its simplicity. So starting with earth, for example, if I say to you, what would an earthy person be like? Then I'm sure you can think of phrases like, you know, they're very rooted or they've got their feet firmly on the ground. So we think of earth, we've got those types of connotations. We talk about fire, we might think about someone being on fire, meaning they're very passionate about something or they're very angry about something. Water, you might talk about go with flow, so you've got flexibility. Talk about air, you might talk about someone having their head in the clouds or being airy-fairy. So there's again this connection maybe to playfulness. And these are really, really easy models for us to adopt and traits to see in people and see in ourselves. So if I had just said to you, you know, what personality type do you have? You would have given it to me from a cognitive basis. So you'd have been thinking about it. You might have told me what you would like to be rather than what you really are, or you might have told me what you think I would want you to say. But if we do it through the body doesn't really lie. So we get more of a true reflection of what our traits are. So let's have a go at the 4 element model, and hopefully you'll play along with me and join in and have a bit of fun. If at any point we do any activities that are generating, some of these patterns will be more familiar to you than others, but at any point, if there's something you're really not comfortable with, please just stop it. I don't want anybody to be uncomfortable. So just use your own guidance as to what's appropriate for you. So let's start off with earth. We've just done a little centering practice a minute ago, so we're quite earthy at the moment. So again, we're thinking about being rooted. So we're planting our feet on the ground. Imagine there's maybe roots going out of your feet into the ground. Our spine is going to be nice and straight. And we're thinking about kind of downward movement into the earth. It's quite good to think about our breathing when we're getting into these different states. So an earthy breathing state would be breathing deeply into the belly. Breath would be very regular, very solid. And a little exercise we can do to help us get even more earthy is I would invite you to put your hands up in front of you, and we're going to draw a perfect square. So we're going to move our fingers very slowly. We want to draw perfectly straight lines. Want to make sure we get those corners right. We want 90-degree angles. And just keep slowing it down just to make sure everything's perfect. Once we've drawn a square, we're just going to draw back up again and trace back to the start. Very slowly, very precisely. And I would just like you to explore how your body feels. Has there been any changes since the centering exercise as we do this? Is there tension anywhere? Are you enjoying this? Does it feel familiar to you? Or are you desperate for me to stop asking you to draw squares? Okay, and we'll just have a little shake, just to kind of shake ourselves out of that state. Oh. And have a little think about what that felt for you. Do you feel much earthiness? Was it familiar? Is it something you'd like more of in your life? That's something we want to explore later in the session. The next element we're going to look at, we kind of look at them in pairs as polar opposites. So the opposite of earth would be water. And we talked about water, you might think of things like going with the flow. So quite often when we want to get into the water states, we would lean back in our seats a little bit, start to relax the hips, start to get a little bit fluid, moving ourselves about. Maybe you imagine you're in the sea, you can feel your arms start to move. And we're softening our gaze, connecting more with our peripheral vision. And quite often when you think of water, we think about the ebb and flow of the tide. So we've got this kind of out movement and this kind of in movement. And in embodiment terms, we would think of this as a giving movement and a receiving movement. So we associate water with connection to others. So you might want to make connection to the people on the screen. Just see how that feels for you. Okay, and we'll shake off the water. Now we're going to move on to fire. So when you think about fire, when you talk about breathing, move up into your chest, so have a few quick breaths into the chest. You might think about your fists clencing up. Your gaze is probably going to be much more single focused, staring right at someone on the screen rather than your peripheral vision. And you think about being passionate, you might be single-minded. So kind of movements being associated with like, I want this and I don't want that. Again, have a feel at doing some movements. You might want to say no and set boundaries. Have a little play and see what it feels like to get into a fire mode. You might also associate fire with passion. So you might imagine you're the football, your team's got to score a goal to win the cup final. You're saying, come on, there's only 2 minutes left, get the goal. So have a think about how would you embody fire passionately, or setting boundaries, or being very single-minded. How does that feel in the body? Is that something you're familiar with, or is it quite unusual to you? And again, we'll have a little shake it off. And the last quality we're going to look at is air. So we think about air, we think about being very playful, we think about head in the clouds. So we're thinking about an upward movement. You want to raise your arms up, you want to look at the ceiling, you want to expand your gaze and take in the whole sky. Your breath is maybe a little bit shallower. And you're looking at awe. Maybe it's the first time you've seen all the stars in the galaxy, and you're looking at them with complete awe and amazement and wonder. Maybe we have a little pot of imaginary paint and we're going to dip our finger in and we're going to write our name in the sky, or we're going to draw rainbows. Just want to be very playful. Okay, we'll shake off our playfulness for now. I'd like to remain playful. So, I would be really like to know in the chat what was the element that you were most familiar with. So notice I'm not saying what was the one that you liked, because it might be that you like something or you want more of it in your life, but you're not actually familiar with it. What one do you think embodies you? What's your main one? And it might be that there's two. Quite often people have one really strong one, but there's another one that they really identify with. So Wendy thought that air was energizing. I saw a lot of people doing airy movements quite energetically. So I don't know, that meant they were identifying with air more. Alexandra liked water. So did Salma, but air made her smile. Faye would like a little bit less fire and is quite earthy, like Amy. So a lot of water and a lot of air, a little bit of earth. Lots more earth coming in now as well. Great, so we've got quite a range there. We've got lots of earthy people and we've got some air and water as well. Quite often more air and water type people that are attracted to these sessions, so quite interesting to see. Okay, so you might think, well, what was the point of doing that? I could have just told you beforehand what it would be. So I don't know if maybe any of you thought, as I described the elements, will identify with that one, that'll be me. And is that the same that you felt after we had done the exercise, or did you find that your body was actually telling you something different? Interesting to know. But for now, let's just go back to the slides and have a little look at why we did this in the first place. So some of the benefits of an exercise like this, it's a really, really quick and easy method to become aware of your own state and your trait. So by state, I mean, what state are you in at this very present moment in time? And I could ask you to do this exercise again next week. You might feel other elements a bit more strongly next week, or when you're tired. It would also depend on your circumstances. So I'm probably quite earthy at work, but I'm far more airy when I'm with friends on the beach. But there will be some elements that you're drawn to more than others, and that would be your trait. Which ones do you keep going back to again and again? So it's really nice just to kind of have that awareness, and you might then think, I would like a bit more of this one in my life or a bit less of this one in my life. And by having that awareness, you can start to cultivate that. We'll talk about that later on. I find it a really good exercise to do if I have a blockage. So for example, if I'm writing something and I get writer's block, or maybe I get a difficult situation to deal with at work, difficult relationship, and I'm not sure what to do, then I'll kind of formulate a question and I'll ask myself the question. I'll do the earth practice and I'll ask it again and I'll jot down what comes up. Then I'll do the air practice, ask myself the same question, jot what comes up, do the fire, do the water. And I find that going into these different states gives me quite different answers. So for example, imagine I say, I'd really love to buy a camper van for the summer, but it's really expensive. How am I going to manage that? If I go into the earthy state, I'd probably start writing lists of, well, what's my budget? How much do I have left over every month? Can I get a personal loan? What would it cost? What's the repayments? That would be very earthy. If I go into fire mode, I might start thinking about, I really want this. Think of all the things I could do, and that would get me really passionate about it and really determined to do it. If I go into air mode, I might start thinking more creative ways to get the money to do that. I might start thinking about a second job. I might decide I could be a digital nomad. An earthy person's not going to think of being a digital nomad, but the airy person probably would. So it just gives you a really good way to brainstorm, come up with loads of different ideas, and then you can go back and think which ones would be appropriate or how could you combine the different ones to come up with a plan. So I find if I'm trying to write something, I'm stuck. It's quite a good way just to remove that blockage. It's also a really good way, I think, to connect with others. If you become aware of other people's element preference, then it helps you maybe resolve conflict or understand why they do something in a certain way. So I remember someone being at a workshop and they said it's a couple and they said they'd been married 30 years and suddenly they understood why the man was doing certain things. She said, oh, I get it now. You're earthy and I'm not. So it's a good way of just kind of contextualizing things. So I have a colleague at work and we're both quite fiery when it comes to teaching. We're very passionate. If I'm having a problem in my teaching or I have a crazy new idea, he's the first person I'll bounce it off. And, we can get really, really excited and passionate and come up with lots of ideas. But then he goes quite airy and I go quite earthy. So recently we were writing a case study together for the next active learning book. I probably shouldn't say this story in front of Janet because she's the editor. But we had about 3 months to write this case study. The deadline was midnight on a Monday recently, and we submitted at 3 minutes to midnight. And as an earthy person, I had it in my diary weeks in advance, get right and do this, do the next thing. And we weren't on the same page when it came to this. And I had no amount of stress about getting this thing. And I just couldn't work to those kind of deadlines. On the other hand, my colleague is very creative. And we were struggling with the word count and he came up with some beautiful infographics to kind of explain things. We didn't have to use words and I would never have been able to create them. So between us, we got there. But in the past, I think I would just have gone nuts. But now I can appreciate his qualities and where he was coming from in a better way. And, we actually had a talk about it later on and he said, I appreciated that I really stressed you out because you don't like to work that way. And I said, well, I really appreciate the creativity that you brought. And it did help us to have this conversation and get on better about how we would work in the future together. And I think that leads to not only relationships with others, but empathizing. So again, maybe helps connect to our students and understand where they're coming from. So maybe if you have someone who's a real problem meeting deadlines, maybe they're not so earthy. But they will have other qualities and maybe we can look at how can we help them to build that up their earthiness to meet those deadlines rather than just being annoyed at them or thinking they're lazy or not bothering or whatever. So it does help to build that empathy. And you can see quite quickly, you can gauge what other people's elements are. You might say there's Briggs-Myers tests and all sorts of other ways you could measure somebody's personality. I've done those tests years ago. I can't remember what I am. I definitely don't know what any of my colleagues are, but I could tell you where their kind of qualities lay in terms of this 4 elements model. And it's not labeling somebody, it's not judging someone. It's just like maybe helping you to learn how to approach them better and how to go on with them better. So I thought I would try to up my airiness by having some quotes. And these are just, I thought we could look at maybe what elements people feel they're lacking in and how we could improve them. So to give you some inspiration for something you might want in your life, I have a few quotes for each element. So this one is for Earth by Jack Cornfield. And he says, let yourself feel the steadiness of the earth, almost as if you have rooted going down like you're a great tea. You're steady, rooted and still, even when the wind blows through the branches. So if we bring more earthiness into our lives, it might help us to be more steady, especially in this world where things are changing so fast. It might help us be more organized, better at meeting deadlines. But if we have too much earth in our lives, then maybe we become a bit stubborn or restricted in our views. So it's about getting that balance. We think about water. It's flowing, flexible and soft, but it's subtly powerful and open, wild and serene, able to accept all changes, yet still led by the pull of steady tides. So water will always move where it wants to go, a certain direction, but it's flexible and it's fluid and it can accept change and it can deal with change. So we've already said that water is connected to people and connections. Is that something you'd like more of in your life? Or do you feel that you're too watery, you're too open, and you need a bit more structure? Think about fire. You might want to bring more passion into your life. You might want to seek your tribe, people who fan your flames, that inspire you. And finally, maybe we want to be a little bit more airy. Maybe we want to have that inspiration from the air. Take time to look up and dream and play and see where it takes us. So I would really love to know, what element do you feel you need more of in your life?
Francis, I put something in the comments earlier about Mark Walsh. Have you studied with him at all?
I did, yeah. He
Yeah.
was the person that trained me, yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, I haven't seen that comment, Beth.
Yeah. No, I just put at the top where I was asking where you got the phrase from, because I'd heard him say that the body's
Yeah.
not a brain taxi. So, but yeah, when I haven't done any embodiment training with him, but I did something called Purpose Black Belt quite a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we looked at this sort of 4 elements model and did this exercise of what element do you need more of. And for me, it was fire. And I went and did karate for 3 years to sort of boost that fire element. And I think that's probably why I'm more comfortable with it now. So, yeah.
That's interesting if you felt it made a difference, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go on to that in a second about how you could increase these elements, whatever you feel that you're looking for. Yeah, Mark Walsh was I did embodied coaching with him, and then embodied and facilitated courses. That was my lockdown, was doing all that with Mark.
Oh, right. Okay. Interesting chap, isn't he?
Very interesting, yeah. And there are other somatic trainers as well, which might be more suited to some people. But yeah, the lot of videos on YouTube and things as well. Introduction, he has a lot of things. His company's called Embodiment Unlimited, if people want to look a bit more into some of these ideas. So we have, what do we have? So Annabelle says fire felt like something my body needed. Salma didn't connect with fire at all, so that's neither did Janet. It's interesting, lots of people are not fiery. And Faith thinks she needs a little bit earth. And Janet wants some more air. So again, we have a good mix here, which makes sense. If you have a preference, then it might be that the opposite one is what you feel that you're lacking in. So we say that the opposite of earth is air, and the opposite of water would be fire. So if you're quite a watery person, you might feel you need a little bit more fire in your life, for example. So Faye has said, if I want less fire, which one should I try more of? So the opposite of fire would be air. So I think I would try getting a little bit more airy, too fiery. So Faye has boogie wonderland. Excellent. I will play that next time we do the workshop. So if I go back to the slides again, then we can have a little look at some of the ways that we could build range. So if you feel you need more earth in your life, then obvious things would be things that connect to the ground. So things like gardening, where you're literally feeling the earth and embodying it. Things like martial arts would be very good because they're very structured. You have to learn specific moves. There's a lot of discipline. And I tried to put a type of dance in for each one. So something like ballroom dancing would be good. Again, it's very precise steps. Something like Kaylee dancing would be good as well, because if you get the steps wrong, you're going to cause chaos in the whole room. Again, it's very playful, so that would bring in some air at the same time. For air, we tend to turn to the arts. So Bess already talked about doing 3 years of martial arts for fire. If you did 3 years of improv comedy, that would have a huge impact on how you project yourself and your playfulness. Air is associated with creativity, so you might want to express that through art. You might want to read poetry out loud and embody it and act it out. Or something like freestyle dance, complete opposite of earthiness, things with complex steps and rigid steps. You can just go do whatever you want, freestyle. For fire, as Beth said, something like martial arts would also be good for fire. Something like boxing or weightlifting. I think the important thing with that is you could just go to the gym and lift weights and your mind could be somewhere else. You would want to connect your mind to those exercises and, you know, be thinking about fire and actually be connecting to your desire as you do these things and your intention. Something like cold water swimming or Wim Hof method, again, would get your passion raised, and something like flamenco dancing if you wanted to do some dance. And then for water, obviously things connected to water would be the most obvious choice, like swimming or water sports. And if you wanted to do some dancing, you imagine something like salsa, it's really sexy, going with the flow would be a really good choice for this. So some of the traits we have, some of our preferences, you know, they're influenced by lots and lots of things. So it could be, you know, your past experiences. It could even be cultural. So imagine you're someone from Scotland doing the salsa or someone from Brazil doing the salsa, then I would imagine the Brazilian person would look a lot better. And, you know, again, that's cultural. You talk about passion, you might think about an Italian person being very passionate. So if you're sort of surrounded by a community where they're using these gestures and these bodily movements, then you probably have these traits more strongly. So for the last section, I wanted to then look on and say, how do we connect embodiment to active learning? So we all know the benefits of active learning, that's why we're here. We all know that active learning means actually doing stuff rather than just sitting passively and listening. So I just wanted to start thinking about some of the types of active learning activities that we do and how they would fit into the 4 elements model. So I've just picked 3 random active learning activities. So if we think about role play, what type of active learning, what type of element do you think might appeal to people who like, if we were going to do role play, which type of elements would the person like? You want to talk or type in the chat or? We've got water and we've got fire here. So they all sound good choices. So I think role play is quite creative. Fire allows people to bring out their passion. People could really get into role and get involved. Water, people could be fluid. We said it's relational. So again, if you're doing role play, you'd be connecting to people. Second activity that we had listed there was the flipped classroom. So imagine you decide to teach from a kind of chalk and talk method to the flipped classroom. Who do you think would like the flipped classroom approach? Which elements? We've got some votes for earth and some votes for fire. And I say absolutely, flipped classroom would appeal to an earthy person who's very organized. If you're doing flipped classroom, you've got to maybe have watched some videos before you come in. So you've had to arrange your time. You've had to know in advance that you had that task to do. You've had to schedule time to watch them to be prepared for the session. So if you just wake up and you think, oh, geez, I've got chemistry today, then too late. you're not going to like that type of learning. And Alexandra says it depends what we're flipping and what we're asking others to. It could be reading, it could be going out into the street, it could be lots of things. So you're right, the actual task could have an effect on what type of elements liked this activity. I think I was just thinking the point of view of it requires some type of looking ahead and some type of organisation that you have to do a task before you come into the session, and that involves some planning. So that would maybe be more suited to an earthy person, and an airy person might find that difficult, but you're absolutely right, it would depend on the task. And the final example we had there was think, pair, share. So maybe you're going to think about something, then you're going to talk to your partner about it, and then you're going to share in a wider group. I think who would like that? Water. Water. Works for everyone. Great. So yeah, we said water is kind of the relational element. It's good for listening to other people, connecting to other people. But you're right, Faye, I think it would appeal to lots of people. It would maybe appeal to people who are fiery and they could be passionate and get their view across. It's quite a structured activity, so earthy people would like it. But there's also maybe some playfulness and some room for creativity, so it would appeal to airy people as well. So the point I really wanted to make is just that the different active learning activities appeal to the different elements. And I think it's quite important that we take that into consideration when we think about the types and the range of activities that we're offering. We don't want to offer purely earthy activities all the time, for example. I come from a science background, physical chemistry, so I'm teaching lots of maths and graph drawing and very precise activities, and it'd be really easy to drop into an earthy zone all the time. And I should think about how can I expand that to accommodate people who have other preferences. Think about something like assessment. You know, I could give a very prescriptive brief for an assessment. I could say, I want an essay. It has to be so many words. You can't go with the word limit. It's got to be this referencing style. It's got to have this structure. It could be very rigid and appeal to some earthy people. Or I could make it really freestyle and say, next week we're having a show and tell, and I want you to bring an object that represents benzene. To the airy people, that would be great, but to the earthy people, that would be terrifying. So does anybody think of any examples of their own practices or any active learning activities to come across that they think would appeal to certain elements? I'm kind of curious as to if we have a preference toward certain elements more than others in the practices. If a small group, people can just unmute if they want to say, or they can type in the chat. Ram used to do a revision speed dating task, which works a bit like pair and share, and that worked for lots of different students. Yeah, nice. Again, there would be some structure to that, which would appear to the earthy people. There would be connection to others, which would appeal to the water people. There would be creativity for the air. And again, there would be certain, maybe some boundaries, and some people could express themselves, have some passion. So that would appeal to all groups. Silent debate, interesting. Do you want to say more about that, Janet, what you do in a silent debate?
It's just, well, I got the idea out of the 100 Ideas for Active Learning and used it quite successfully with the PG CAP colleagues as a way of demonstrating as an approach. And I think it's quite structured, and it's quite, it doesn't require people to be terribly outgoing to do the silent debate, but you do get that interaction. So I thought it was quite earthy.
And how did you feel with being earthy?
I thought that was okay with, because I'm quite earthy.
You picked what you liked.
Yeah. But it also considered, I suppose there is an element of creativity in there, so there's a little bit of air.
Good. So Beth, you're talking about other models that use the elements as well. So in astrology, air is associated with the mind and emotionless. Creativity, more of a water trait. That's really interesting. So I think earth, air, fire, and water are so kind of accessible and universal that they are used in lots and lots of different models to represent different things. And I think it's quite nice maybe to look at how other people in other cultures use these elements as well, and then bring in some of these ideas and see how you can amalgamate them maybe into to mix them all together. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, Beth?
Not really. I think
Yeah.
one of the values of this kind of exercise, it's about achieving balance. So it doesn't matter exactly how you split things, as long as you sort of know what your split is and you're making sure that you're balanced in all the quadrants.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It could also be interesting, you know, if you had a class and you were putting teams together. So imagine, like, I wanted to take a chemistry product and we were looking at, you know, how would you take it from creating it to having it in the shops? And I might have a tech team that were going to do, you know, all the really detailed analysis of chemistry. And I might have a marketing team that were going to look at branding it. Then different types of people would fit into those different teams very well, you know. So I might want to have the airy people in the marketing team and the earthy people in the tech team. I might want to mix them up and put them outside their comfort zone a little bit as well, just to expand their range. But it's interesting to think about those group dynamics, and, you know, maybe even people that you work with that you get on really well with, and you don't get on so well with. It's quite interesting. Alexandra used to do a relay race to the board, which was split into two sides and had teams. They had to complete their half of the board for the other team. It was fast, raucous, loud, and fiery. And that does sound very, very fiery. So I think anything where there's a competitive nature, or maybe there's a challenge, would appeal to people who are quite fiery. So that sounds a good idea. And Sam was talking about competitions as well, but did not work in all cultures. So again, some people who are not fiery were probably not motivated by competition, or maybe don't like to rush things, or they'd rather take their time, be more creative. So that's really interesting as well.
Have you ever used this sort of explicitly with the students? And if so, what was their reaction? Or do you just sort of, is this just part of your planning and you don't really sort of talk about it?
It's more subtle. I've started trying to introduce a little bit of embodiment in. So, I mean, a really, really simple thing to do is something like centering, like we did at the start.
Mm.
So last year I had a little mindfulness meditation for exam stress class that I ran before the exams for the final years. And we did some centering practices in that. And the point of it was, we did, I think, 4 weeks, every week for 4 weeks. And it was just to give them some tools to manage their stress before exams. So we did a very simple centering practice. Centering, we have a kind of ABC practice. So A is awareness. So feel your feet on the floor, feel your bum on the chair, just become aware of your body. B is balance. So again, are you to one side? Are you moving in? You're moving out, straightening the spine. And then C stands for connection. So that could be connecting to another person on the call just now, or someone else in the room. It could be bringing to mind a person or an animal that makes you happy, for example. It could be picking out 3 yellow things in the room, but just some kind of connection and taking it again from your mind to the body. So something like that's a really simple practice. Again, I wouldn't do that with a class of 500 first years that I don't know. But with a group of final year students that was quite small and that I knew well, I felt that they were all quite equipped to do a practice like that. And I think they did use it on the run up to exams. With a large class like first years, I might try to gauge the energy levels. So I'll say to them, how are we feeling today? Are we feeling energetic? Are we feeling really tired? And I ask them to raise or lower their hands. And again, that just connects them to the body. It makes them, and it gives me a good gauge of, you know, like if they're really energetic, maybe I can get through more material today. I could tackle some difficult thoughts. If they're really struggling, I think, okay, let's slow things down a bit. I might use a sign, tell me to slow down. If you think I'm going too fast and you're not understanding the material, so I might just pause and say, do I need to slow down? How many hands are going to go up? So if I asked them to verbalise that, they wouldn't do it. But, you know, nobody's feeling so bad about just giving me a sign. And some students have said that they like that I do that just because it shows I'm caring about them. I'm not just, it's forming a connection with them. I'm not just walking in and talking and then walking out again. So I think it's baby steps. But in my planning, I will try to include a range of assessments and activities that might suit people from different types of preferences. Janet, you've got a question.
Francis, you've actually just answered my question. As I put my hand up, you answered the question. So I was just thinking about, did you actually use this very deliberately in your you know, how when you plan your sessions? And you just said you do, so that's fun. But what I was thinking is this could almost be like part of universal design for learning, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Because it links very closely to those ideas about multiple means of you know, interacting and engaging with students. It's such a good fit.
Yeah, I think so. So I think all these models are different ways of looking at the same issues and dealing with things. And this is just a kind of quick and easy one that people understand quickly. They can connect to quickly from themselves and with others. But yeah, it does connect to UDL in a lot of ways. Absolutely. And it's not always easy to say I'm going to include everything. You know, I might not include everything in everything I do, but I think, you know, if you think about throughout the year, I want to have a range of experiences, and some students will be more comfortable with some than with others. And, you know, one of the things you want to do is expand range as well. So you don't want people just in their comfort zone. So that's where it becomes a bit more skillful. You know, you have to put people, I can have a kind of traffic light. I think, you know, I've got this green band where students are comfortable. Then I have amber, and then I have red where they're overwhelmed. And it's getting this balance between just tipping them into the amber and expanding that green zone, you know, and making them do things that maybe at the start of the year they weren't so comfortable with. Oh, Alexandra had an interesting task where students would need to create their own country, draw the outline and flag, and imagine the terrain, design geographical features or monuments, designing cultural norms and cuisine, outline laws and historical events, etc. That's really interesting, Alexandra. I like that. And it includes lots of, that would really be a really nice kind of UDL task. It would incorporate all the different preferences. There's lots of attention to detail there. There's lots of creativity. People could get quite passionate designing their island. That sounds really, really interesting. Beth's asking what the purpose of the task is. So I don't know if you can unmute Alexandra, or if you'd like to just put a comment in the chat. Communication skills and culture, it's nice. It's really, really nice. So, no problem. Thank you for sharing with that. It's really interesting. Just to finish off, as I kind of get towards the end of my slides, then I really just wanted to give a few key takeaways. I would encourage you to be playful and to experiment with this yourself. And 3 things I think always to remember is we're trying to bring awareness to our body, to how we're feeling in the moment. We're looking to expand our range. And these are important for ourselves and when we're working with students. And the really important when working with students is to offer choice. So we don't want to overwhelm, and some people have very small ranges of tolerance, some will have much more expansive ranges. So we want to offer choice. We want to offer a way out. If people are not enjoying something, they can either opt out or they can change to a different task. And it's important for ourselves, but particularly for students maybe that we don't know so well. So I think tailoring things to, you know, smaller groups of students you're more familiar with allows you maybe to be a bit more experimental and take things a bit further. But just gradually introducing tasks is a good way to build up their range. So that is me. If anybody has any comments or questions or experiences they'd like to share, we'd love to hear.
Is any questions for Francis? We've had lots of fantastic questions and comments in the chat. I've certainly started to think differently about my sessions, so thank you very much, Francis. I'm just going to pop the link to the feedback form. Oh no, that's That's a link to my Padlet in the chat. So if you'd like to just give us a little bit of feedback, that'll be fabulous. And I think let's just thank Frances in the usual way, if we can. So thank you so much for that, Frances. It's been really, really interesting. And it just goes to show you can always look at what you're doing in a slightly different way.
Thank you very much. And I'll go and be playful this afternoon, go out and go for a walk, put your pictures on Padlet, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival. Thank you so much for coming along today.
And fabulous. And oh, just a final reminder, the mosh pit activities. We've got some ongoing activities that can be accessed from the session slides that seem to take a long time to get. It seems to take a while to get these up on my screen. But if you go into the overall session slides, you'll see at the end there are the mosh pit activities. So please do feel free to have a look at those. And I guess we need to stop recording. Do you need to do that, Frances?
Yes, it will. I'll close the room when everyone leaves. It will automatically stop at that point. So
oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. And hopefully see everybody at the session this afternoon. Okay.
Great. See you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.